So with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Hai Gu. He's Vice President and Head of Global Simulation Center at ABS, and he will moderate the session on harnessing maritime big data and analytics for efficient operations. Over to you, Dr. Gu.
Thank you very much, Klaus. Welcome to everybody who is joining us today. I'm so glad that you are with us. We will soon be exploring harnessing maritime big data and analytics for efficient operations. Before we get to the discussion, I'd like to invite our distinguished panelists to introduce themselves. Keng, you want to start?
Well, thanks, Guhai. Hi, everyone. My name is Keng, and I'm from the Agency for Science, Technology and Research, or A*STAR in short. So A*STAR is the largest public sector R&D organization in Singapore, and we do a lot of research in the area of computational modeling, simulation, and AI, in order both to advance science and create industry impact. And we have a lot of collaborations with maritime companies in the areas like navigation, traffic safety, port operations, optimization, decarbonization, and supply chain. So I'm really looking forward to this panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Keng. Hock?
Hi, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I'm Hock from PSA International. I'm in charge of Group Process Excellence and Group Technology in this organization. PSA International, as you may know, is a global container terminal operator. We are one of the biggest in the world. But in recent years, we have also moved in a big way to orchestrating supply chains and providing cargo solutions. And again, very happy also to be here to participate in this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Hock. Thibault, you want to go next?
Yes, sure. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Thibault. I work for Cargill Ocean Transportation as a digital transformation lead. As some of you may know, we are mainly operating on the dry and the tanker space, acting as operators. And I'm very excited to be here with you and to talk about data and digitalization, which is a core topic of what we do in Cargill as well.
Thank you, Thibault. Demetris?
Good afternoon and good morning to everybody watching. I'm Demetris Chrysostomou. I'm the Managing Director for the Asia region for Columbia Ship Management. I'm also the Group Director for Marketing and Business Development for the group. As the name says, I'm from the ship management industry. I've been with Columbia for 24 years. So hoping to bring some insights, at least from the perspective of a ship manager, to this panel today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Last but not least, Antoine.
Thank you, Guhai. Good afternoon. Hello, everyone globally. I am one of the two co-founders at Shipfix. My name is Antoine Grisay. Shipfix is a chartering and trading platform used by some of the leading operators, traders, and shipbrokers globally. We provide collaborative workflow tools and market analytics to predominantly to the dry markets, and progressively now we're also entering the tanker space.
Thank you, Antoine. Thank you very much. I think the maritime industry have come a long way in harnessing data and analytics for efficient operations. Today, we have a good opportunity to hear the insight from our panelists who represent various stakeholders in the value chain. Probably, I want to throw my first question to Hock. As one of the largest container ports in the world, how does PSA take advantage of big data in its business, and what are the challenges the PSA encounters in applying big data? Hock?
Right, thank you, Dr. Gu. PSA is indeed a big user of data analytics because of the sheer size of our operations with many terminals all over the world. But the biggest one is in Singapore. So imagine in Singapore, we welcome 400 vessel calls in a week. There's a lot of vessels, and there's a transshipment port. What it means is that when the ship is in town or at berth, the containers for the ship would have arrived days or weeks earlier than the ship's arrival. So can you imagine that if the ship comes in at a delayed timing, comes in 2 weeks, 2 days later than when it is supposed to be berthed? So that creates a lot of logistical problems, berth planning, yard planning, equipment deployment, people deployment, everything becomes sub-optimized. So what we do is that we build a predictive model to forecast the vessel arrival so as to give PSA a look ahead from 3 days to 14 days to identify in advance vessels which may be delayed coming into the port. And as a result of this, we are able to take reactive and preventive actions to replan our berthing and also recalibrate all our resource deployment so as to reduce any sub-optimization. So I'm glad that this our vessel arrival prediction model has given us a lot of cost savings and resulted in better asset utilization. Another just quick example is the use of data, big data in equipment preventive maintenance. Well, we have a lot of cranes all over the world, and each crane is a very expensive piece of equipment, and each crane with the sensors on the crane will give us about 2 gigabytes of data each day. So we make use of the data, we train different models for different components on the cranes so as to identify abnormal patterns on the cranes during operations. So after training the models on the cranes, and we are able now to predict which equipment would likely to have problem in the coming days or coming weeks, so that our technicians and engineers can attend to this equipment, replace the components, and get the crane ready for operations without any breakdown during operations. Now, as to the question on challenges, just 2 quick points. One is resourcing is always a challenge. You need data scientists, but the bigger problem we face here is data engineers. We have a lot of difficulty having good data engineers to make all these big data projects happen. The second thing, problem challenge is the quality and availability of data, and that constrains us as to the type of projects that we can undertake. That's all I have, Dr. Gu.
Thank you very much, Hock. Thank you very much. I think that's an interesting topic. I think Hock mentioned about the predictive model for forecast the ship arrival. It's kind of stressing time arrival. We also talk about the predictive maintenance. I want to ask my second question to Thibault. I think to get all this like just-in-time shipping and other applications, the sharing of data, and I think Hock also mentioned about availability and quality of the data. So data sharing is an important topic. Can you share your insight about the data sharing, like from operator and charter's perspective?
Yeah, I think traditionally operators have not been very good at sharing data. They are collecting data, but not necessarily sharing them. I think we are moving to a world where there is benefit for every participant to have those pipelines of data, API first products, whether it's for our consumption or whether it's for our customers' consumption. What we're seeing on some topics, especially around emission, is we need, it's a big puzzle that we need to put together, and the data are sitting in different parts of the supply chain, and everyone has a benefit to share the data to achieve a common goal. So I think there are a couple of topics in the current landscape, especially around emission, that are forcing us to think a bit more around sharing data. And I'm a true believer that the API first product and creating a framework in terms of data sharing is a way to go. I do believe in a digital ecosystem rather than one solution fit all type of solution.
Oh, thank you, Thibault. So you mentioned about, can you elaborate a little bit more about your second point is not one solution fit all?
Well, first of all, I think the shipping industry is going through an acceleration in terms of digital transformation, which means that naturally you're going to have lots of actors. So, and that's not something you can fight against. There will be market participants entering, exiting. There will be a lot of them. So what is key is that those market participants can talk to each other and connect on what matters to them, instead of having sometimes what we used to call in the past end-to-end integrated solution that does everything for you. You're more looking to have a network of solutions that are connected together and can interact together, regardless of who ultimately owns the software or owns the solution. So I think that's really the world we are moving into, almost connected devices, connected softwares, and API is probably the best way towards this.
Thank you, Thibault. I think naturally I want to ask a question to Antoine about because Shipfix is a data platform, right? That's my understanding. You're also providing services and informational service technologies and services. So would like to hear your thoughts about the comments from Thibault and Hock. Also, we want to hear from you is how do you think that how and why operational data matters for the chartering market specifically, and why it matters more than it used to a few years ago, like for example 10 years ago?
I think, well, that's a very good. It's a very good question. It's a debate we've had with Cargill and many other companies. I think the overall the reason operational data matters more and more to charterers and traders alike is because there's an increasing amount of focus on ESG metrics, and that includes everything, right? So it's speed cons for the vessels, it's emissions, ballast water treatment. Or the means that are put in place. Therefore, it's scrubbers, it's propulsion, it's crew safety and the fair treatment. You know, ITF compliance, all of that. It's driven by an increased level of transparency, in part thanks to platforms like ourselves, I think, but also just communication and media in general. An increased awareness around ESG disclosures, and that's something that goes through. The pressure can be felt throughout the global supply chain, and that goes from the very consumer in the global economy all the way up to the large natural resources, mining groups, and traders. And I think technology allows today for increased data capture, as we know. And I think there was a very good example mentioned here of sensors on cranes, right? I mean, there's all sorts of things like that, of course, and telemetry on board vessels is only the start of that in a new generation of data lakes that will feed all of those analytics. And it affects the largest industrial producers and mining groups, who are obviously some of the predominant chartering clients in this market. So there's also a case, I think, for another thing that's changed a lot is the intervention of the regulators in the face of that, right? I mean, the SECA, low emission zones, all of that matters a lot today, and a lot of chartering clients will make sure that the chartering choices are as clean as they can get. I mean, we've recently integrated with, for example, with RightShip. We've announced it publicly yesterday, precisely with to allow our core clients in chartering markets to make ESG-friendly decisions in their chartering choices. Other things, I think the world is increasingly aware of the risks associated with supply chain disruptions, not just the players in our markets, the whole world. I mean, the Ever Given is one thing that comes to mind. The Russia-Ukraine situation is another one, with the impact on global commodity prices, GDP, inflation, employment. So all of which we sort of track in the global press, not just in the shipping press. So all of that has put shipping in the spotlight, and nonetheless from an ESG standpoint. Lastly, to answer your point, and to complete Thibault's point on APIs and interoperability between platforms, that's a particularly important point. Every platform has a degree of overlap with the peers and partners. There's lots of different things we work on. You have vessel management platforms, you've got chartering platforms like ourselves, you have mail clients. There's all sorts of tech providers in the shipping universe, in the shipping and trading universe, and this big ecosystem we all work within. I mean, it's an absolute obligation today. You have to integrate. You have to allow for a fluid for a flow of data between these platforms, because that's how you create value for the operators and traders. I think the platforms who don't do that today are exposing themselves to isolation, and ultimately they simply won't fit in an ecosystem where everything has to be interoperable.
No, thank you. Wonderful, Antoine. I think the last comments about the API first really is the question I want to ask you, but thanks for the answer. Then I like to hear from Demetris. I think the comments so far from our panelists, many of those will be interested for you as a ship manager, right? So I'd like to hear from you, and more specifically, how do you think ship managers are dealing with big data and analytics for vessel management and performance optimization, as well as providing value-added services to interested stakeholders?
Thank you, Grisay. Yes, I mean, all the comments made by all our panelists are very relevant to us as a ship manager, because we play a role which is kind of interconnecting the different stakeholders on the panel today. So by the mere fact that we manage vessels, the investment in technology, digitalization, and the use of big data is obviously very important in providing efficiencies and optimization in what we do, which then has a knock-on effect or a chain reaction to the rest of the logistics chain. So from a ship manager's point of view, our part as part of this evolution is actually critical. So we do need to do this investment. We do need to remain compelling and relevant to the industry. And I think it's fair to say that, you know, if we look at our clients today, we're predominantly ship owners, but of course there are indirect clients like charterers, ports, and so on. The expectation from ship managers is that there is actually the ability to harness big data, and then from that to be efficient and optimize, and to bring a new value proposition. I mean, this value proposition is of course efficiency and optimization, which leads to saving of time, saving of costs, increasing revenue, at the same time also giving cleaner, efficient, optimized shipping, but also being predictive in the way we work and being proactive in the way we work. At Columbia, we've invested heavily in performance optimization control centers. These are 24/7 manned. We have a number of centers around the world, so it's 24/7. We've invested heavily in artificial intelligence and machine learning. This gives us the capability to deal with the big data and, of course, put that to good use, but at the same time, also to have a predictive application to what we're doing and be more proactive rather than being reactive. So basically, you know, the conclusion of this for us is that to be compelling and to be critical to the industry and to be relevant to the services we provide, this is definitely something which all ship managers have to do, and it's an expectation from the market, the stakeholders, not just from our clients. So that's, I guess, hopefully that's managed to answer the question of the importance of what this is for ship managers.
Thank you very much, Demetris. Great answer. I keep a Keng to the last for a reason. Is you know, we have learned a lot from our industry stakeholders, and institutes of higher learnings like IHPC definitely play a very important role in developing technologies and solutions to meet the industry's short-term and long-term demands. And we hear a lot of things like predictive maintenance. Hock mentioned about the Keng, and we have several panelists mentioned about data analytics and AI models, etc. I know that's something you're very interested and you're planning for something. I'd like to ask you, Keng, as a research organization looking into the future, what are some of the key advances the R&D community is working on to advance AI and analytics?
Well, thanks, Kuhai. We are both looking into short-term R&D projects in collaboration with companies so that we could leverage on the capabilities that we have built in the past in order to create impact. And I mentioned that some of these projects are in the area of navigation safety in maritime traffic, in which we participate as part of the MPA Living Lab. And we also work with port operators to look at how do we use big data for port optimization, for berth stay prediction, and also really looking at some of the analytics for maritime supply chain network and intelligence. For example, looking at how disruption could have an impact on ship arrival. But as we look at the short-term projects working with companies, as what you said, we are also looking into the future on what new capabilities that we want to develop. And I think just now there was a discussion on sharing of data. And I think one of the panelists mentioned that each company now optimizes only for its own operation rather than across the value chain, which is really, really needed. So, and the issue really is about the trade-off between the benefits of sharing data and also the risk and the potential competition if, let's say, one's own data become available to other companies. So as one example, we are working on areas such as trust computing, in which we apply some of the new algorithms in AI, such as federated learning, privacy preserving analytics, that allow AI and big data analytics to be done without having the data owner to send their private data externally. So the idea is along the line of moving algorithms rather than moving data in a privacy preserving manner. And so it might be interesting for you to know that actually this kind of technology is already being used. For example, like in your iPhone, you know, the Siri voice assistant is actually using this kind of privacy preserving machine learning in order to improve the language ability, but without data on your phone leaving your phone. So this is one area we are developing. Another area is the whole field of human and machine synergy, because humans are very good at high-level decision-making, whereas machines are very good at narrow applications, you know, more repetitive, where you could have a lot of data to train the AI. So we are looking at what is the best way in which humans can collaborate with machines. And one example of a project is that we're working with Singapore Poly, with the Center of Excellence in Maritime Safety, to use AI in order to help to monitor the trainees and the students' actions and behavior during the ship navigation training, by tracking where they pay attention, team working ability, so that this kind of lower level raw data could then be analyzed and fed to the instructor, and the instructor can then focus on a higher level guiding and training. So this way the machine work with the human in order to maximize learning. And at the same time, we're also working with port control centers in order to see how AI could assist the port operator in terms of traffic navigation and traffic safety. So these are two of the examples of more forward-looking, more future-looking and long-term areas.
Thank you, Keng Hui. I think now we have heard the thoughts and insights from every panelist. Actually, I'm curious to ask one common question to all panelists. Is big data and the data analytics is a topic that we talk almost every year and in many occasions. So how do you think whether the topic of big data today is different from similar discussions 1 or 2 years ago? This is a question to all the panelists. Maybe Demetris, you want to start to share your thoughts?
Yes, absolutely. That's a very good question. And again, I will answer it from the perspective of a ship manager and give our panelists the chance to answer from their perspective. It definitely is a difference than the discussion we would have 2 years ago. I mean, 2 years ago, I think it's fair to say that most ship managers and most ship owners, although they looked at digitalization and big data as a nice to have, but not a must. And also they considered it as something really for the big players. I mean, shipping is a very fragmented industry. So they've perceived this more as something for the big players. And, it would be nice for them to have, but not a must. But we've seen over the last 2 years, I mean, a huge amount of factors which have actually come together in a perfect storm. For instance, there's increasing rules and regulations. There's bigger requirements on ESG. There's requirements for cleaner, efficient, optimized shipping. And then we've also seen geopolitically recently the Ukraine-Russia crisis, which of course affects seafarers and operations of ships. So these factors have all come together to highlight to most stakeholders in the industry, and especially ship managers and ship owners, that there is definitely a necessity to invest in digitalization and the utilization of big data. This is going to be critical for the future, for the management of vessels, for the operations of vessels, and for the success of being a ship owner at the end of the day. So to answer your question, definitely it's a different conversation now. And I think, you have to adapt or die. And I think that's where we are now. And, where we come from, we are definitely investing, and this is a major part of our strategy in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Demetris. Any other comments or insights from the floor, from the panelists? Hock, you want? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so maybe I can chip in
Sure.
because our organization works with many companies in different sectors. And a very interesting observation is that since the past 1 or 2 years, almost every company that we met, whether it is in maritime, in material science, in manufacturing, in healthcare, or even consumer goods, almost all of them are interested in big data, in AI, and this is really driven by some of the reasons, some of the externalities that Demetris mentioned, and also driven by other factors such as computing being a lot more accessible because of advances in cloud, accessibility of mobile devices, and also the institutes of higher learning are also churning out a lot more digital talent. For example, like this week at the Singapore Maritime Week, I happened to meet one of the ex-colleagues from the Singapore University of Technology and Design, who shared with me that the info systems division, the academic pillar, in the university has now grown to be the largest division in the university. So we are definitely seeing a lot more interest in taking up, in digitalizing, in trying to use the digitalized big data in order to derive insights to create values.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I think that's a good news for Hock, because you talk about resourcing. I think that's one issue we face in most of our organization when we try to do digitalization using big data. I think we are almost there to get to the Q&A session, but I want to hear from Antoine and Thibault and Hock. You have any comments on that from your perspective?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I agree with all the speakers with regard to this question. I think in the last few years, there's a rapid ramp up on projects of machine learning, AI, data analytics, and so on. And it gets to a stage where I think most of the low-hanging fruits, if I were to use this term, has already been plugged. So what I'm basically saying is that we are getting to a limit. Some companies sooner, for other companies a bit later, but we get to a limit in terms of pushing in the big data direction, limited by the quality and availability of data. So I think some of the panelists alluded to the importance of sharing data. We are in the ecosystem. No company is on its own by itself, and I totally agree. There'll be many fields, many fronts where we have to exchange data and work together to maximize the value for the ecosystem. And so some form of data sharing standards, data sharing protocol, data sharing infrastructure, those things are all very important going forward into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Hock.
If I can just add, for me, what has changed in the last 2 years, because I mean, big data sharing has always been around us since 10 years, I would say. But I think what has changed in the last 2 years within the shipping industry is probably coming from the customers and the fact that they're asking for more visibility, transparency. That got emphasized by the disruption around COVID, but that was already there before COVID, I would say. And I think everything around all the discussion around emissions and the different targets, whether they are regulatory targets, whether they are non-regulatory targets, that each of the participants will try to meet independently. And for those to be met, you will need to compose with a lot of data. I don't know if it's big data, but a lot of data, and all those data sitting left, right, and center. And I think we have a unique opportunity to work together for a win-win for once. While before maybe data sharing was kind of perceived as, yeah, but if I give you this, you're gonna use it against me. I think for emission, it's a really different ball game. We just have all the same interest to collaborate on that front. So I think that for me was the biggest part that changed in the last 2 years.
Thank you, Thibault. Thank you. Antoine, you have any comments on this?
Yes, just without echoing too much the words of Thibault, I think the emissions game is going to be a mandatory play for everyone. It is profoundly data driven. That means that and ultimately the cost of carbon offsetting will be repriced into the freight rate and transferred to the charterers. And to do that appropriately, I think it needs to be you need robust data. You need to capture that in a sound way, and you need to be able to process it in a systematic way. And most platforms. So we see two things from our perspective at Shipfix. We obviously talk to a lot of operators, traders, and brokers. We see that a significant number of the leading players already have the data science teams in place. And have started working on this front, and it's not just emissions; it's all of it's the broader operational data projects, it's and market data projects, some of which we're very involved with. And then I think I think that's where we see the trend going. And the other thing is there is already a ton of data available in the market. People have been pooling data in so-called fashionably data lakes for a long time now, and so the challenge is to structure all of that data and to extract the nectar, what is effectively usable and implementable in practice.
Thank you, Antoine. I think I want to ask one question. I think it's a good opportunity for us to discuss. This probably can be a very impactful project or program for our maritime industry. First, I'd like to ask this question to Keng. I understand that A-Star is planning a national program for maritime AI with the aim to work with the industry to promote the development and adoption of AI. Can you share a little bit more about this program, if it's okay to share?
Sure. I'll be happy to. The idea behind this is to address many of the challenges that the other panelists have shared. Whether it is the lack of quality data or maybe it's quantity, talent, awareness, as well as the lack of easy to use AI modeling tools because of the shortage of talent. So we are currently working with the Singapore Maritime Institute to work on a national initiative in the area of maritime AI. And the whole idea is to leverage on public and private partnership in order to collaborate with maritime companies for AI development, AI adoption, and also AI scale-up. So right now we are in the initial stage of proposal scoping, and this is where we welcome a lot of inputs. And some of the initial ideas that we have is the development towards a maritime data bank or data lake comprising of standardized data which are AI ready. And so this is where we are looking for partners who could trust us in order that within this particular sandbox, we could try out something like this. And the second one is the development of an AI model store. So you can think of it as analogous to the Apple App Store, But in this case, it's a repository of AI models and libraries where non-AI specialists could more easily create AI applications. And we are now looking for partners, maritime use cases to develop this as a pilot for test bedding and subsequent scale up. And some of the areas we're looking at could be maritime traffic safety. Earlier we mentioned about GIT operations, predictive maintenance, maritime emissions monitoring. And the whole idea is really to leverage this as a public-private partnership so that we could test pilots, push the boundary, and eventually develop the ecosystem together, and also position Singapore as a center of excellence in the area of maritime AI. Yeah, so anyone who's interested, this is really a shout out to everyone to please reach out to us at A-Star at IHPC, and we'll be very, or even to Singapore Maritime Institute, and we'll be very happy to engage and connect with you. Yeah, thank you,
Keng Hui. To Ms. The question to the other panelists from the industry, it's a good opportunity if you have any suggestions or comments to this program. Maybe Keng Hui can consider that when putting together the proposal. Any comments from the panelists? Anyone? Hock, I guess you mentioned about the predictive maintenance about the crane. From your own experience, do you have any suggestions or comments that you want to give to Keng Hui?
Yeah, I do not know too much about the things that are coming up as mentioned by Keng Hui, but I think PSA been such a major player in the port of Singapore. We definitely like to get involved and work closely with A-Star. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. We'll reach out to you offline.
If you allow me, I would also just like to say that listening to Keng Hui, definitely there's an interest from us for sure. I think as ship managers, I think we're leading the way together with a few other ship managers. So definitely a lot of investment, and like I said before, a significant part of our future strategy as a company. So I think we would be reaching out to A-Star also.
Thank you.
Too.
I mean, from Cargill perspective, if I'm really honest, I'm liking a bit of use cases just yet on where AI could apply, but that's also probably because we haven't spent enough time looking at those use cases. So I mean, yeah, always happy to have a discussion around the AI topic. We are, I guess, as operators, we are not necessarily sitting in this sweet spot where we are receiving big data, and maybe we're limited in our AI application, but I think that's a discussion that is definitely worthwhile having on the side.
Thank you, Thibault.
Just from our perspective.
Yeah, go ahead, Tento. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, from our perspective at Shipfix, we also welcome the collaboration with academia, research in general. We work with a lot of institutions. We very much welcome a discussion on that front as well. It's anything that can help us add value to the shipping community or our clients is always something that we can we love to entertain.
Thank you, Antoine. I think we still have a few more minutes. I'm very curious. I ask a question for myself, Demetris. You mentioned about the performance optimization center within Columbia Ship Management. Can you share more information about that? What do you do? What are the data you use, and what are the approach you use to optimize the operation?
I mean, basically, because we are a ship manager, we can't dictate to our clients that they need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on sensors and so on. So we have developed a performance optimization control room that collects data manually, semi-automated, and automated depending on the investment of the vessels. Therefore, we've invested in AI and machine learning to be able to use that data to cross-reference data, especially manual data, that it's actually accurate, because that's important. And then what we do is we, of course, use that to optimize the voyages of the vessels, starting from the pre-planning, voyage planning, and so on, then actually monitoring the voyage itself. And then after, when the voyage is completed, is then analyzing the voyage, benchmarking against sister vessels, benchmarking against previous voyages, and then also learning from that. So, you know, it's the planning, the actual voyage, and afterwards. And then we try to, you know, be predictive in the way and forecast for future voyages and make better decisions. So it's all about decision making based on the data for optimizing vessels voyages, and then of course all the efficiencies and savings that come with that. Just in a nutshell, very simply, that's what we do.
Okay, thank you. I think definitely we need offline, we need to discuss more. I'm very interested to learn more. Thank you very much.
Always welcome.
Thank you. I think we have 2 minutes for us. I would suggest that normally we do this way. Would you like to, if we want to give the audience one takeaway you want them to take away from this discussion, what would that be from your perspective? Who want to start? Can I put you on the spot? You start with the one takeaway.
So I think big data and digitalization is really a very good opportunity for maritime companies to move to the next S-curve. And I really welcome anyone to contact us as we scope this new initiative in Maritime AI, so that we could really look at partnerships in order to move to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you, Keng Hui. What want to do next?
I wouldn't mind. On my side, I'm kind of a consumer of digital solution, and what I'm always telling the different vendors is work on the API and build solutions that are data-driven and data-centric, and have working API, work with your customers to make sure those API works. So, I mean, for me, one takeaway of the discussion is we seem to all agree that data will need to be shared across different participants. Let's make it happen, and let's make sure the solutions that are being built as of today and tomorrow will always be built on the logic of sharing an API first.
Thank you.
I could say then, I mean, for me, it's very simple. I mean, it comes from the adapt or die that I said before. For me, I think if everybody has to make their businesses compelling, especially if you're in the service industry. And if you don't, and there's nowhere to hide. I mean, you know, digitalization, big data, this is all part of our future, and you need to embrace this. Otherwise, I think the future would be difficult for anybody in the maritime industry not embracing this.
Thank you, Demetris. Hock and Antoine, you want to comment?
Yeah, I just want to summarize this way. The sharing of data magnifies its value. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Short and sweet. Antoine?
I'll keep it very short too. I think we're in an interesting age where we've transitioned from accumulating a lot of data and trying to find a purpose for it, economically, operationally, and otherwise. The table have now turned, and I think we're at a stage where we know exactly what we want out of the data, and we're putting the data to work to fill that purpose. And so that's going to lead to an acceleration of data research and development around it, and the value creation for it. So I think we're only going to see more and more of this.
Thank you, Antoine. I would like to thank all the panelists for sharing their insight on this important topic. It's really a pleasure talking to you. And also, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us in this session. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much from my perspective, also to the moderator and the panelists. Personally, I must say what resonates with me very much is the emphasis on APIs and integration. So at EPS, one of the things we pursued on the IT strategy was to build a data lake and to build a sandbox that would allow safe integration. So even sort of on the ship owner, ship manager side, that's probably a good thing to do. Another observation that I had is perhaps to look outside just the maritime industry. So recently I had an introduction to a quantum computing company that is producing algorithms for airline cargo optimization. And that strikes me as something that I haven't really seen taking off much or being explored in the maritime industry that I think is getting to the point where it's mature enough to be experimented with. So sometimes perhaps we can learn from other industries that has big players exploring these things like aviation.